So if you're living in St. Mary's County and you're thinking about who to vote for judge, this is going to be a great conversation because I'm here with Sue Ann Armitage at her office in Lexington Park, and we're just going to be learning a little bit more about Sue Ann, her background, what's motivating her to run for judge, and we're going to fire away a bunch of questions that you, the followers, have asked, and I'm just the everyday guy trying to deliver them. So Sue Ann, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. So just to get things started, how did you get to this position of being a lawyer, running for judge? I know that you're from St. Mary's County, so what did that progression look like for you?
Well, you know, I'm from St. Mary's County, grew up in Ridge. I've always wanted to be a lawyer, probably since 7th grade. I think I was motivated by my mom, who said, you need to find some type of work that you can do that you can utilize your best skill, which is a gift of gab.
Hey, there you
I
go.
was always chatting, and she's like, you got to find something. And then I also was taught by nuns and got in trouble a lot for talking in class.
Part of the course?
Yes. So they said, we're going to teach you how to do public speaking. We're going to utilize that skill that you have. So about 7th grade, I loved to do research. I enjoyed that. So I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. Since then, I was motivated to go to law school. I was the first in my family to graduate from college and to go beyond college. But I also wanted to come back to my community. So I was happy to graduate. I came back here. My path was a strange path because I worked in law school for a law firm that did insurance defense work.
Okay.
Defending workers' compensation claims and automobile accidents and insurance claims. And I came back here and started doing domestic violence, which was an eye-opener. If you've never been involved in a domestic violence situation, to actually see it firsthand was very sad and frightening.
Sure.
But I started my work as pro bono work, representing victims of domestic violence. I didn't know anything about family law. I learned the domestic violence code. They would call me up and say, can you represent these 3 people tomorrow in court? I would get their file. I'd meet them in IHOP. I didn't have an office. I'd meet them at IHOP, McDonald's. I would interview them, understand what's going on, prepare them for court the next day, and then I'd go in and try the cases. I think I got into family law, which is a lot of what I do, but 70% of the cases in circuit court are family law cases.
Sure.
I got involved in family law because I was so struck by these victims that would get out of the domestic violence and then get right back in because they didn't have the money, they didn't have the resources to get out of these horrible situations. So I decided I was going to learn how to do divorces and to help extricate these people out of these terrible situations, mostly children. It's very sad to see these victims come to me. I help them, I get them a protective order, I get the spouse out, and then 6 months later they're back seeing me again because they reconciled, because they couldn't financially be on their own, they were afraid. So I learned the family law code and I started representing them to help them in that situation. My goal is always about children. I think the community should first look out for the weakest of us, and that's our kids.
100%. Yeah, I feel like it oftentimes is the case that the easier thing for folks to do is just to get back together, even if that's not the best thing for their relationship or the best thing for the kids. So that being said, so you kind of got your feet wet in family law. Was there a certain point in your career that you just had a particular case that made you say, you know what, this is what I'm going to dedicate my life's work to? Or was it the case that, you know, maybe it was just a progression of cases and you thought, okay, I'm good at this. This is where my expertise is. I want to continue in this direction. How did that kind of process go?
With anything else, when you open your practice, you take a little bit of everything. So in the past, I've done workers' compensation cases, estates and trust cases, criminal cases. I've done a little bit of everything because that's what you do. I was fortunate, this is a really kind of cool story. I was fortunate when I came back to the county, odd story, my dad's getting his hair cut and the barber says, you know, what's your daughter up to? My dad says she's looking for an office. And he said, well, what kind of office? And he said, she didn't have a lot of money. She just moved back to the county. So John Bohannon Sr., I don't know if you know the former delegate John Bohannon, but his dad.
Yeah, for sure.
So his dad, Ken Cross, another insurance guy, and the delegate Johnny Wood, he passed away just recently, I guess it was last year. Those 3 men got together. They gave me an office space just down the street for free for almost 2 years.
Nice.
That's the kind of community I grew up in. That's why I love this place. And when I came back, that's why I was able to give back and do all this pro bono work, because these 3 nice gentlemen helped me get on my feet. Yeah, I did a little bit of everything to begin with, and I still do a little bit of things, but mostly family law, because most of the cases that are tried in the circuit court are family law cases. So it's kind of become my expertise, but as a lawyer, it's, you know, you pick up a book, right? I do research every day.
Sure.
Somebody will call me up and say, you know, ask me a question. question. I have lawyers that call me up daily and say, can I pick your brain about this case or that case? And I always go to the books to say, here's the statute, here's the case law. It's good to stay on top of it, but everybody reads. You got to stay current, I guess that's the word.
Yeah, for sure. And prior to getting on the cameras, we were talking about basically the different ways in which people choose judges. Some people think of them as being, translators of the law. Other folks are seeing them as arbitrators of justice. Other people are seeing them in their own way. And so with that being said, when you think about how someone should decide who they vote for, what's some of the criteria that you think should factor into being a good judge versus a bad judge?
Well, I do think integrity is the number one. Someone that you can trust, someone that has integrity, that's impartial, that's fair, that's knowledgeable. I've had 33 years of being in a courtroom, and that's important because a judge calls the balls and strikes on a jury trial, so they have to be able to understand the rules of evidence. They have to have the courtroom protocol. They have to be able to maintain control in their courtroom so that victims, so that witnesses, so that litigants have a fair trial. So I think it's important to look at the characteristics of the person that's running, and if you know them, you understand them, you've seen them, they have the experience, I think those are really key elements in deciding who to vote for. I had an interesting question. I was at Bay Montessori this morning talking to some children. Great conversation.
Sure.
They come up with the greatest stories and the greatest questions, but one of them asked me, why is it important for us to even care about who we're voting for, care about judges? And a lot of times courts don't touch people's lives. You think about it. A lot of people never walk into a courtroom.
Right.
But when that tragedy strikes and you do have to walk into a courtroom, you want to make sure you have the right person on that bench making your decision. So when I say tragedy, it could be divorce, it could be a car accident, it could be a criminal situation. Maybe you're the victim, maybe you're the perpetrator. You want someone that is going to be fair, impartial, and listen to you and make a decision. So many times cases go before judges and they sit, and the decision they reserve, they take it under advisement. People need decisions. So I think these are some of the things we should look at when you go to vote.
Yeah. Whenever you're talking about politics, people oftentimes have very strong opinions. They have very strong biases. And I think that this, by the way, the first question from one of my followers, but I remember it, is we're all biased in some way, right? We all have political leanings one way or the other. I don't know other people think of the left and right, Republican, Democrat, what basically constitutes right and left when it comes to being a judge. But as you see it, how does your kind of like moral values and your political leanings influence the way that you conduct yourself, as a lawyer, and then how you will conduct yourself as a judge?
Well, political leaning really has no bearing in judging, right? I know everybody comes to everything with a bias. Like, I might not like black, right?
Sure.
So I see you in a black shirt and I'm like, I really like you.
It's great.
It's great, though. I do like you. I said it's great, it's great, it's great. But a judge should not have biases. When we talk about morality, again, the judge's job is to apply the law to the facts and make a decision. That's a judge's job. It is not to decide whether or not they like you or not, whether or not they are influenced by the color of your eyes or the color of your shoes or your gender. It's to decide the law based on the facts. So really, the morality and your political affiliation shouldn't have any bearing. I will say that what will affect my decisions and what has affected my decisions as a lawyer, probably morality. I believe in doing what's right. So what's right for children. I always say to my clients, and say, well, this isn't fair. And, he's not doing the right thing and he shouldn't get custody, or, I should win this lawsuit. And I say, what is fair is what's going to happen. And in things like family law, what is fair is what's right for your children, right? That's an easy answer in a family law case. I'll tell them, you want to do what's right? Do what's right for your children. And every judge will be on your side. Doesn't matter what happens. They're going to rule for your children. That's an easy answer for the family law issue.
Reminds me of another question. Someone asked, what advice would you give for somebody who has a minor who committed some misdemeanor crime and they're basically looking to kind of rehabilitate that person?
Good question. We used to have, and one of my initiatives, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, is to go back to a juvenile court. It's not a separate court, but it's a program, a diversion program. It diverts juveniles away from incarceration and into rehabilitation. It provides services for free. So mental health services, drug and alcohol services, so that we can rehabilitate our young and they don't end up in adult court. So the advice I would give someone if they came today way, since we don't have a juvenile court, would be to get your child to mental health services. And if it's a drug or an alcohol issue, and say a minor offense, I'm guessing it's something simple, I would suggest getting them addiction help that they would need treatment.
Understood. And so actually that kind of makes me think of another question. It's nice how they're kind of all lining up well enough together. So that's for juveniles. Now, what about those folks who are committing some more egregious offenses? Talking about, sexual offenders, especially against children. One of my followers asked, what's your plan for getting these folks basically off the streets and keeping them from becoming repeat offenders?
Well, harsher sentences. We have guidelines, we have sentencing guidelines, but they are guidelines, and harsher sentences, especially for repeat violent offenders, they need to see the inside of a jail cell. And you also need to order, and some judges do not do this, but when you sentence someone to jail, they also can provide services in jail. So such as sexual offense, they need to be provided services, mental health services, while they're in there. But tougher sentences. And that's a serious thing. I believe that there's been some serious things that have happened recently where people had been sentenced lightly.
Can you give me an example of like a situation that you can recall in which somebody did something that you thought should have been sentenced more egregiously?
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
There's a gentleman that was found guilty by a jury of rape by force. The guidelines were 5 to 10 years. His sentence was reduced down to 18 months so that he could spend time at local jail. If you get sentenced for more than 18 months, you have to go to DOC, Department of Corrections.
Okay.
He was sentenced to 18 months so that he could stay local. He spent less than 10 months in jail.
Where was he at for the other?
He got time served for wearing electronic monitor before he went to get his sentencing. Yet I assume good behavior, but he spent less than 10 months in jail. 3 months after he was released, he was accused of another crime, and this time it was against a child. That was recent. Those are things that I think the community needs to be aware of, and the community needs to understand that we need tough sentences for people that commit these types of egregious crimes.
What do you think you would have sentenced to?
Well, I'd have to look at the factors, but he should have at least gotten the 5 years. He should have at least gotten the minimum.
Yep.
And depending on the rest of the factors, since I haven't read the entire case, it might have been more.
Okay.
But now we have a child in our community that is going to suffer the consequences for the rest of that child's life.
Yeah. You're going to have a lot of different criminals and different, a range of suspects, right, come through your doors. That being said, is there any particular type of crime that is especially heinous to you? Is there any type of, crime that makes a significant impact on you?
That's a tough question to answer because you don't want to show any bias towards any crime. You take the bench, you listen, you hear the factors, you look at the points. I think all crimes need to be taken individually and individual cases. So probably would say, there's some that are more egregious than others, and you know that as well. But
sure.
I do think there are some segments of people that we could offer services to other than incarceration, such as veterans. We don't have a veterans court. That's another initiative I'd like to start. And I'm talking about for nonviolent crimes.
Okay.
We have a lot of veterans in this community. We have the highest veterans per capita in St. Mary's County over than any other county in this state. And we don't have a veterans court. There are other counties that have veterans court, but we don't. And I would like to have, just like the juvenile court, it's a veterans court. It's a diversion program. It enables veterans to receive necessary mental health and addiction treatment as opposed to going to jail, of course, for nonviolent crimes.
Yeah.
Those are the types of probably segments that I'm really interested in because I think we can give these diversions to individuals. I mean, think about it. These people risk their lives for us. Some of them have mental health issues as a result of risking their lives for us.
Sure.
This is the least we could give back to them.
Have you ever lost sleep over a trial and your performance in the trial?
Oh, my friend. I have lost a lot of sleep in my life over cases.
Okay.
I worry every day about cases. I wake up in the middle of the night. If you ever see me the first thing in the morning, I typically have things written down my arm because I don't want to wake my husband up, so I'll write on my hand. And if it's a particularly worrisome night, I'll write all the way down my hand because I care. I mean, I really think this is because I care. I worry about my clients. I worry about their children. I worry about the outcomes. I've had a lot of difficult cases. I'll tell you one I worried the most about. I had a lady come, she ran from her husband in Florida, domestic violence victim, came up here with a child, a severely disabled child, nonverbal, non-mobile, basically ended up at my doorstep one day. And I let her in and she's very upset, no money, and needed help. And I filed an emergency petition. She got the custody of her children, but husband wouldn't pay her any money. And the child was nonverbal, non-mobile, she had to carry. She had no equipment for him. She woke up every every 2 hours at night to rotate her child so he didn't get bed sores because he's non-mobile. And that case bothered me, really bothered me. And I was sick about it. The kid, when she came here, I think he was 4 or 5. He was only supposed to live to 8 because of his severe disabilities, and it was genetic. And I just wanted so badly to be able to get her the equipment she needed. And we tried this case multiple days. She ended up receiving a pretty large sum of money each month. And that kid is almost 14 years old.
Wow.
So it's one that I'm proudest of because I worked so hard to get her what she needed, but also getting that equipment for this child, he's thrived that he wouldn't have before. So those are the types of cases that make me happy, that I feel good about. I mean, I have people sometimes knock on the door and I'll let him in and it'll be a kid and he'll say, you know, you represented my mom or my dad, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate what you've done for me. And they'll be adults because I'm old. I've been doing this a long time. I'm old.
They grow fast.
They do. Yeah, there you go. Thank you for that. But yeah, there are a lot of cases that I worry about every day.
So from our prior conversation about you playing the piano and your instructor saying, she's no good, and then you go, your competitive spirit, you start learning how to play the piano, you teach yourself how to play the piano. So I imagine that you're fairly competitive when it comes to your work as well. So one of the questions that I was asked was, do you keep track of your wins and losses? And if so, what's your track record for your trials?
I don't have to keep track. I win them all. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, undefeated.
Undefeated. Well, I tell people, I lost very few cases because, and this is all in all candor, because if it's not a case that you can be successful, and they're really not wins and losses, if the facts are not in your favor, then you need to find a resolution. You need to find a way to resolve the case without going to trial. So that's why my record is good, because I know when the facts are not going to help you in front of a judge or a jury. So the question is, what do you do? Well, then you find a way to resolve it to get your client the best outcome you can.
Yeah.
And that's why alternative dispute resolutions are a fantastic way and a fantastic avenue to avoid trial and the cost of trial and the headache of trial.
Yeah.
So yes, my track record is really good, but partly because I know how to resolve cases.
So Armitage is a divorce attorney. My divorce was handled by the magistrate. Aren't most divorce and family law cases handled by the magistrate and not the judge?
So uncontested matters are handled by the magistrate. So if your case is uncontested, yes, 15 minutes to your divorce testimony, you're over with. Anything under 3 hours can be heard by the magistrate. If it's over 3 hours, it has to be heard by a judge. Or you can say, I want my matter heard by a judge as opposed to a magistrate. I do go before the magistrate because I have cases that are uncontested, but difficult cases are always heard by the judge. I am before a judge on family law matters probably 3, 4, 5 times a week. So no, not all cases are heard by the magistrate. And if it's over 3 hours or difficult, and most of these custody cases are 2-day cases, they're always heard by a judge.
Cool. Can a judge really bill the programs you referred to on your plan for day one? Isn't that something the administration handles?
You have to have a judge willing to do it. You have to have a judge willing to have Veterans Court or willing to do Juvenile Recovery Court. And without that, you can't get it done. It is an administrative idea, meaning administrative for the judge. So judges can decide that they want to do something, then they have to get the grant, the money to do the program. But Calvert County has a Veterans Court, PG County has a Veterans Court. The funding is there. I've already done the investigation and the hard work. The funding is there. And the desire is there. I've met with veteran groups. They want it. They want the assistance for their people. And it's something we should, if we have the highest veterans per capita, why don't we have it? Why do other counties have it and we don't? So yes, those programs are, a judge has to be the one initiating it.
Okay. Cool. Second to last question. I think these days with COVID, there's been a lot more attention that people have put on their health, right? A lot of people have done more research to understand what's going into their foods, what's going into their bodies, etc. And so now vaccines are much more debated. They're much more contested. When you think about kids that are unvaccinated being kept from public schools, do you think should that be something that the parents should decide, or should the state continue to decide that?
I think as a judge and as a lawyer, we follow the law.
Okay. If there's anybody who's watching this and they're interested in learning more about you, going to one of your events, coming to meet you at some point, or to support the campaign in any kind of way, is there a place that they can go to learn more and just kind of join in?
Yes, 100%. VoteArmitage.com is my website. You can go right there. It has a place where you can click on if you have any questions, you want to donate, you want to come to the events, sponsor events. I've got a breakfast coming up on May 4th down at Harry Lundenberg School. And fingers crossed, I have another event that I'm trying to schedule. I won't say what it is, but it's going to be really great with some really great people there. So I'll put that on my website as soon as I iron out the details. The details aren't ironed out, but it'll be fun things. So just ask people to get out and vote. Early voting is May 2nd through 9th, 3 polling booths. And then the primaries are May 14th. Something maybe the voters don't know, but it's a nonpartisan vote, which means you don't have to vote. You vote your ticket line, Republican or Democrat, but the two candidates are on both ballots. If one of us is fortunate enough to get the majority vote of the Democrat and the Republican, it's over with on May 14th. So that's something people don't know. If one of us gets the Democratic majority and one gets the Republican majority, then it's down to the wire in November. So May 14th is a big day and it's an important day. Get out and vote, please.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you having me. And
thank you,
Jonathan.
Appreciate it.
What you're doing.
Thank you.